Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to another Planet FPL Clash of the Correspondents. And this week, we're looking ahead to the weekend fixture between Arsenal and Newcastle United at the Emirates. Firstly, let me introduce you to our Arsenal correspondent, Adam Pritchard. How are you, Adam?
Not too bad, thanks, James.
Good man. And our Newcastle United correspondent, Simon Bibby. How are you, Si?
Good, boss man. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you, mate. I'm well. Adam, we last spoke prior to game week 3. You were about to go to Manchester City. It'd obviously been a bad start following the Brentford-Chelsea results. We were at a stage where we thought this might have been meandering towards a kind of slow death conclusion for Mikel Arteta's Arsenal. You got battered at City. It got worse. But then in the 8 games afterwards, you got more points than anybody else. We'll come back to the Liverpool game in a bit. But is it completely swung now where Arteta is completely comfortable again now?
I don't know where he's completely comfortable. I think it got to a position after the City game where it looked as though even the air quotes like easy wins or the games Arsenal should win, well, we wouldn't win them. And what he showed and what Arsenal showed over that time was that obviously the first 3 games was too soon to judge whether that would be the case. And with a kind of refreshed and regenerated squad and with a bit of time on the training ground, the methods and the trust the process stuff that he talked so much about, you could actually start to see it take place and have some effect. So I wouldn't say he's like completely smooth sailing in the clear, as sort of a read through Arsenal Twitter after the weekend will tell you, but no, I think it's kind of reassured some fans who, I guess like myself, who had wanted to think the best of Arteta, but those first 3 games had kind of rocked their faith a little bit.
Is it a case of that, obviously, with the Liverpool game at the weekend, that as soon as there's one bad result, there's people come out the woodwork and are straight on his case immediately because they just won't be changed now?
Yeah, I think so. It's I mean, I guess it's sort of like that with any online Twitter kind of fan sentiment. It tends to be quite reactionary like that. But I think there is, with Arsenal, because so much of the online fan culture grew up around the Wenger in, Wenger out kind of dichotomies. I don't think the fan sentiment ever really kind of got away from, you either have to fully support the manager or you have to be fully against him.
I get it.
So there's like no nuance in the discussion. Like after the Liverpool game, people were either like, oh, well, it's Liverpool, they're one of the best sides in the league, which is obviously true. They recently won the Champions League, which is obviously true. We should never expect to get anything out of Anfield, which I sort of agree with. But then at the same time, you never want to be going into any game just accepting that a 4-0 battering is okay. And then there are other people saying, oh, Arsenal should be competing for league championships and European titles. This is unacceptable. It's like, wake up and smell the coffee. That's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, get that. So when we last spoke, we thought it probably was going to be Eddie Howe. It now is. Happy with that?
Yeah, although he's not been spotted at St James's Park yet.
No, so. Unbelievable.
Only our club, I think, would sign a new manager and he would get COVID and miss his first game in charge. But yeah, I think we did talk about him being the most obvious choice. I was a bit apprehensive at the time, but like every Newcastle fan, as soon as he turned up to training at 7 a.m. on the first day, everyone was just buzzing about that. The fact that we had a manager that seemed like he was committed to training, and yeah, exactly. And I think it's the last time I'm ever going to mention it, but like when they talk about delusional Newcastle fans, when you see like the reaction to something like that, it just kind of shows like what they're looking for in terms of manager and commitment and ambition and just kind of a will to win and have a game plan, really. So apart from the COVID stuff, which obviously I assume couldn't be helped, I don't know what his personal, I don't know how he got it. I don't think that's even, I had a look, I don't know if that's even been reported exactly how it was picked up, but it seems like he's going to miss the Arsenal game, be back for the Norwich game, so feels like a bit of a free hit, this Arsenal game, which could go either way.
I think so. I get that. I mean, there's one really interesting statistic between the two teams so far this season. That's that Newcastle scored more goals. And my first reaction, Sire, to I watched all of the first half at the weekend, was that this trend, which I think has been going on since kind of Graham Jones got hold of a bit of the coaching in January, of your games featuring quite a high number of goals, is probably going to continue. Because there was certainly a great bravery about the way you played at the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the team that he set up with Shelby and Willock in midfield, no holding midfielder. Like fair enough. I was a little bit scared to see that, to be honest. But then that's why I'm not the manager, and I think whether he targeted Brentford at home as an opportunity to play that way, or whether he's just trying to instill belief, or whether our holding midfielders are just a bit too shit and it's not worth having them in the side and taking up one of those spots. Fair play to him. Getting Shah back in, I think, was something that all the fans wanted to see. I mean, he gets beaten too easily 1-on-1, but then so do all our defenders. So you might as well put someone in that can play on the ball and bring it out a bit, which we know Eddie Howe likes. So, yeah, all in all, was pretty encouraged. Stupid goals to give away. Poor goalkeeping by Darlow on the Tony goal. I mean, he was always going to score. So that was kind of inevitable, but potentially might have Dubravka back for this weekend.
I keep saying this every week. Dubravka will be back in goal this week. Dubravka will be back in goal this week. Is this the week it will finally happen?
Yeah, I think so. He played the international break. I think it was a case of whichever players weren't on international duty, because he was away. I think Eddie Howe just wanted to give the players that he'd been working with the opportunity and not mess about with it too much. With the exception, I think, of Shah coming back in, because anyone apart from Steve Bruce could see he should be in that back line. So, yeah, encouraging. I don't really know what to expect from Arsenal. Every time I've gone and watched a game at the Emirates, we've been battered. So, might happen again this weekend. We'll see.
I have memories of an Andy Carroll header under Chris Hughton. That's probably my favourite Arsenal-Newcastle memory. At the Emirates, anyway, there's one I remember a little bit more fondly at St James's Park, which Adam won't want me to bring up.
I've got a funny story of being at the last Newcastle game that I went to, if you don't mind me.
Is it clean? Is it clean?
Yeah, it's pretty clean. So,
that's good.
In the away end, I can't remember the last
name. You saw
name.
Mike Ashley drinking. We've all seen that.
No, it wasn't that game. It was a nighttime game. We were in the away end, and it was one of the young lads that he'd literally played for Newcastle twice. He'd come up through the reserves, goalkeeper, and he was having an absolute nightmare. I think this is the game we lost 5-3, and it was 5-1, and then Perez scored quite late on. And everyone in the away end was giving this keeper absolute abuse, horrendous abuse. And to be fair,
great
he
set
was
of fans.
19. Exactly. Turns out 2 seats away, his missus was sat in front of us with the goalkeeper's dad. And then after about 75 minutes, she just had enough and turned around screaming at the fans. I won't say the goalkeeper's name just because I still feel guilty to this day, because I did get involved in some of the should we say, less than supportive constructive criticism towards
bad man
Jack,
side.
But it was pretty funny. But yeah, every time I've been to the Emirates, which is 3 or 4 times, it's just been on a hide to nothing. So be interesting to see, as you say, we're more attacking this time. Can we build on that draw against Brentford? Another draw? Can we get our first win? I'm not so sure. I mean, if you're asking me now, I'd obviously take another point at this stage.
No, I get that completely. While we're on the subject of goalkeepers, Adam, I was posed a question very recently. Who's impressed you this year that is a better player than you thought they were? And I think Aaron Ramsdale goes right to the top of that list, doesn't he? He's done very well, in fairness, hasn't he?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I kind of had a thought, it might have been after the Leicester game, that he's probably the player that, like you say, has kind of changed my opinion of the most, regardless of club they play for this season. I think he was the signing that most people kind of look to quizzically when Arsenal made it. It's well, hang on, why are you signing effectively, or what a lot of people thought of as a championship standard goalkeeper? He's been relegated twice. When you've got, or why are you signing him for so much money as a backup, seemingly? And I think I put out a positive spin at the time, is that when you look back at it, or even at the time you look at it, there is no English keeper available who is younger with more Premier League experience than Ramsdale. And for Arsenal, who need to keep the homegrown quota, in mind, and have to keep one eye on the future, and also don't have the kind of cachet or cash to go out and buy like a world-class goalkeeper, should Leno, who looks like he wants to leave, decide to leave sooner than the end of his contract, Ramsdale's probably was about as good as we were going to get at the time. And even being as optimistic with that spin as I could have been, I don't think I could have expected him to be as like transformational as he has been. I think there's not really many other ways of describing it than that. I think the kind of leadership he's brought to the back line is something that I haven't really seen at Arsenal for quite some time. Like, we've had it in defenders like Koscielny and Mertesacker were kind of quite underrated in their leadership capabilities, especially Mertesacker. I think, even though he was very slow, he was so good at organising and kind of rallying the defence. And since he kind of dropped off his peak and fell out of the side, we haven't really had that kind of that emotional figure in the back line. And the way he kind of rallies the defence, and also the way he rallies the crowds. Like, if you look at what he does, you kind of can't really always see it on the camera, but with the crowd and the way he interacts with the fans, he just energizes the whole stadium, and it's really, really nice to see. It's kind of a little bit of a throwback. Like, you kind of like to think that the stereotypical shouty goalkeeper might not be as important in modern football. But then you look at kind of a lot of the top sides have that kind of figure in goal. Like, if you think of Schmeichel at Leicester, like when he was at the peak of his powers and when Leicester were doing their best, he would just yell and scream at the Leicester defence all game long. And Ramsdale's brought a bit of that kind of bite back to the Arsenal defence. And it's really nice to see.
When I was at the derby, I could certainly tell that the relationship between goalkeeper and fans had already been built. Like, they were, despite kind of what you read online, we've spoken about this a number of times, is not necessarily the picture with Arsenal as what's actually going on inside the stadium with the people that pay to go. And I could tell immediately that there was a relationship where the fans inside the ground were absolutely going to give him their backing. I've been so impressed with his distribution, actually, Adam, as much as like shots stopping and stuff. Really good.
Well, and that was the thing, because goalkeeper's been a bit of a problem position at Arsenal for quite some time, and we obviously signed Czech, and there was all the talk. I think it might have been Terry who came out in the press saying, he'll win Arsenal 10 to 15 points a season. And he was a solid enough kind of shot stopper, but his play from the back was dreadful. And then we signed Leno, and we thought, okay, this is a bit of a step up. And then you look at Leno in comparison to what Ramsdale was able to do, and you think, okay, we've just been playing with kind of an average ball progressor in goal for a few years now. The way Ramsdale's able to be so calm on the ball, he doesn't ever really look too flustered. And then at the same time, some of the kind of reflex saves he pulls out, even in the Liverpool game at the weekend, we can lose 4-0 and think, our goalkeeper's still been our best player.
Was it fault for first goal?
I don't think so. If it's the kind of one where if he saves that, you're thinking, okay, that's like one of the best saves I've ever seen. I think maybe he could have done better only by his high kind of comparative standards.
Okay. I want to come on to some of the defensive ones, but do you think we've seen with Eddie Howe at Bournemouth in the past that system will change? Do you think back three is the way he wants to go longer term? Have you heard anything in terms of that?
No, not really. I think it might even come down to who's available in January. So you're talking about short term between now, like our nightmare.
It was difficult to predict what you're going to do in Jan, obviously.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because if you look at all of the moaning that Steve Bruce did, and I think there's still elements of like Rafa's DNA in the team, particularly definitely in the playing squad. And I think with the fixture run coming up, I wouldn't be surprised if he stays with the back three wing backs. I was glad that Murphy was brought back into the team. I don't think he really deserved to be dropped. You could argue he was potentially at fault for one of the goals, kind of not getting back and covering. But you look at wing backs in this league now, and not all of them are given any responsibility. You look at the Chelsea wing backs; they barely defend at all. And you think if Murphy's going to play in that position, you can't really hold him too accountable. Coming back, so I'm glad he was back in the team. I think we'll stick with a back 3/back 5. I think it also, if you're not going to play a holding midfield player, I think when they do kind of push up and it almost becomes like a 3-4-2-1 type situation, then it means that Shelvey and Willock aren't going to get too isolated and pushed out wide. So yeah, I'm happy to see how it goes. It'll be interesting to see if he plays the same formation and personnel away at Arsenal. But equally, I guess that will depend whether he kind of takes the risk that Arteta is he going to come out and play a more offensive team, or is he going to kind of revert to type a bit and try and kind of keep it compact and solid. I think it's a fascinating game actually, with two different managers, two different styles, and it'd be great to see what kind of Eddie Howe, kind of how he approaches this game as his first away game.
I think, so with you obviously talking about the midfields being sort of Shelvey and Willock at the moment. I guess the thinking behind the no kind of orthodox ball-winning midfield player is to use Shelvey as a deep line playmaker, which is obviously a position that did get him an England cap. I guess that's what the thinking is. Yeah,
and he played well against Brentford. If you saw he got the kind of hockey assist for what you'd say for Joel Linton's goal, where he sent Saint-Maximin through, and that was actually from a position where he won the ball just outside our own box. So I've always been an advocate of him playing in that position. I think it's quite easy to get run off him. So if you look at the Arsenal midfield, Smith-Rowe and Saka, depending where he plays, I think Smith-Rowe could have some joy playing against him, playing off him, because I don't think Shelvey's going to track him all the way. So yeah, I think at the moment, based on his performance in the last game, he just kind of deserves that starting place. I think he offers a little bit more creativity from that position than Longstaff. I think Longstaff needs to play a bit more further forward, get a bit more involved, be able to make those forward runs, which is kind of Willock's game. So I don't really see Longstaff and Willock working as a two. I think Shelvey and Willock, or Longstaff, if Willock's not fit or firing, is the better combination. I feel bad for Hayden actually. I think trying to find a spot for him in the back three as someone that can progress the ball isn't something I'd rule out. I mean, we've got Clark playing on the left side of the defence, so hopefully Dummett will be back soon to take that spot, but he's just not really up to it at this level anymore. Puts the effort in, just like not up to it. And I think he's been a problem for us.
I guess considering the fixture, he could look at this week, couldn't he, and go, right, we'll put another body in midfield, go 3-5-2, play Saint-Maximin more centrally with Wilson, and you put Hayden in there with Shelvey, and then you probably allow Willock to go and be the one that supports, which would probably be good for him. We've seen that he's very capable of getting goals from midfield, so could go that way.
Yeah.
I don't mind Isaac Hayden actually. He's always a player I think gives his all for you.
Yeah, there was talk of him potentially being our kind of captain. I think people have grown a bit frustrated with Lascelles, and he's become a bit stagnant and seems to kind of get on the other players' backs a lot in games this season. I don't know if it's frustration or not, but there's a lot of finger pointing and stuff at our own players, which we haven't really seen before from him. But he got a goal and an own goal last week. But you'd think that some of the comments that have been coming out of the squad from the first couple of weeks of Eddie Howe's training, I think hopefully we'll see an improvement from him, and he can kind of step up and kind of get back to a level he was a couple of years ago, where not top level, but good enough, I think, to kind of marshal a back 3/back 5 to start keeping some clean sheets that we need.
Adam, tell us about these three new defensive players who have come into the team and what your thoughts are on them. Let's start with Tomiyasu, mate.
Tomiyasu is someone who, despite what Sky Sports were telling you, does actually have a position, as opposed to whatever that weird deadline day piece where they claimed he didn't actually know where to play. He's a very kind of solid, dependable right back. What he's done is kind of adapt that inverted fullback or inverted right back style that Arteta he kind of brought quite noticeably to Arsenal when he first joined, in that he's not necessarily bringing the ball inside into the pitch with his feet, but that's kind of quite often where he looks with his first pass. His final third product isn't necessarily the best, but I don't really think that's what he's being asked to do, because I think quite a lot of the time, as everybody who kind of watches Arsenal semi-regularly will know, is a lot of our kind of overlapping creativity comes down the left, whether that be through Tavares or Tierney. So almost when Tierney or Tavares on the left kind of bombs on, Tomiyasu is kind of instructed to stay back a little bit, almost forming like a pseudo back three in case we get hit on the counter. One thing he's really, really good in the air, very, very good in the air. And it helps because occasionally he's been used by Ramsdale as kind of an out ball. So if Ramsdale's trying to play it out from the back and he's under pressure, Tomiyasu will just push up the pitch a little bit. Ramsdale will be able to ping one in the air over to him, and thanks to Tomiyasu's aerial ability, he's more often than not able to kind of cope with any physical threat. And I think he's proved himself very, very, very dependable. I thought probably his best game was the North London derby. I thought he was very, very good that day.
He was good.
And I think he was a little bit shaky at Anfield, but then again, he
wasn't alone.
He wasn't alone, and that's probably the worst place you can go as a fullback nowadays, away at Liverpool. So no, yeah, very, very happy with this signing. Very, very happy.
And what?
Just I was going to say, just on him before you move on. He hasn't faced Joel Linton yet, though, has he? Hey,
somehow I think
you laugh.
Yes, I do laugh. I do laugh.
To be fair, if you play the same way, we're playing against Saint-Maximin weekend, which actually could be a problem. So,
yeah. Well, the way Joel Linton was utilised, which is actually his best position, is kind of playing as a weird kind of left-sided, deep-lying number 10 that kind of actually wins a lot of duels. He won 11 duels against Brentford, which is the most in the league last week. He actually played really well, and like surprisingly, like some fans are actually started to, he's become a little bit weirdly in one game, a bit of a cult hero. Like it sounds strange to say after one game, but you always look for like one player that makes like a real big kind of step up and impression when a manager has his first game in charge. And that was definitely Joel Linton, not just the goal, but his overall play. So I actually think it'll be interesting him up against Tomiyasu and that kind of aerial duel to see like who comes out on top. I think it could be quite key in the game if he plays on the other side position.
If you play the same system, presumably Joel Linton is going to be really tasked to go backwards with Tierney or Tavares, depending on who plays, I would have thought, rather than him go up against Tomiyasu. And
also from an attacking perspective, it would make the most sense to pin like your strongest aerial threat not on Arsenal's strongest aerial threat, I would think anyway.
Shelvey diagonal to Joel Linton versus Tierney, for example, he's got far more chance of winning it, hasn't he, in terms of the first ball?
If he plays him out there, I'm just saying that's not the sort of position he was picking up in the team, or I've seen him play when he plays in that kind of left-sided attacking midfielder role. So
I think he would play right, I would have thought, partly because of what Adam's saying as well in terms of that left side. There's so much Arsenal have a real bias to attacking down that side. And I think you don't want Saint-Maximin going backwards, right? You want Joel Linton as the one going backwards if you play the
No, I don't think Eddie Howe's kind of is, although he talks about the entire team needing to press. I think you're right. It'll be, again, first away game, working with the players that he's got. Be interesting to see what he does and if he changes it, and if we said it could be a midfield game plan.
It could be a midfield 5 even, and a flat 2 up front could well be. Ben White, Adam.
Again, a bit like Tomiyasu. Very pleased with his signing as well. I think it was a bit of all Arsenal centre-backs seem to go through a bit of a baptism of fire. I think he struggled to start with in a kind of a bit of an unsettled and a new back line. Like if you think back to the start of the season, for those first 3 games, we didn't have what is now our first choice defence. And I think as that unit has integrated and come together, you've seen the best of Ben White. I think you've seen that perhaps some of his weaknesses, particularly in the air, have been mitigated against, and his strengths have been optimized, which is always what you want out of a defensive partnership. I think the timing of his interceptions and his tackles, sorry to bring it up again, I'm not really sorry to bring it up again, the North London derby, I think you saw that day is something that he's really, really good at. I think the way he makes decisions of when to bring the ball out with his feet and when to look for a diagonal switch is really, really intelligent. And I was a little bit surprised he's not kind of being talked more about as an England kind of call up or an England starter. But then again, I'm perfectly happy for him to kind of go under the radar and get more time on the training ground, because I think the more time our defence spends working together as a unit, the better it is for all of them, because they're all still in the kind of early stages of their Premier League careers.
Do we think Tierney comes back in this weekend? Does the Liverpool game give that an excuse for that to happen now?
See, I was kind of thinking he might come back in for the Liverpool game.
Same.
I was kind of thinking, well, we might go to a back 5, drop Tierney as the left-sided centre-back, Tavares on the wing-back, and probably drop Emile Smith-Rowe, to be honest. And it would seem harsh on Tavares to drop him after one bad performance, because everything that he, in air quotes, did wrong against Liverpool were all the kind of limitations that we knew he had anyway. His energy is great. And ironically, I don't think he was caught defensively short many times. Like if you look at the passage of play where he gives the ball away for Jota's goal, I can't remember.
It's all anyone will remember though, isn't it?
Well, yeah, exactly. But in that passage of play, he does really quite well to win the ball back. And there were a couple of times he went toe to toe with Salah, and you could tell Salah was like, okay, no, I'll step off this time. There aren't many fullbacks in the league who will make Mo Salah kind of reconsider his decision to take them on. So yeah, I think Tierney will come back in, and I just hope it doesn't kind of knock Tavares' confidence, because I've been quite impressed with his energy and his enthusiasm and his drive being effectively thrust into first team football, when I don't really think it was anyone's plan that he would have played as many games.
Yeah, I think in fairness to the boy, like he's obviously played well enough to keep meant that Kieran Tierney, who arguably it was probably your player of the year last year, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but the fact that he didn't come immediately straight back into the team, I think speaks volumes to the fact, okay, kid's done well, run with it for a while. With the fact that the defence has tightened up, Adam, does that mean midfield is your biggest area of concern now, basically?
Yes and no. Like I think the kind of 4-2-2, 4-2-2-2, 4-2-3-1 kind of formation we've stumbled across, with Lacazette kind of dropping a little bit deeper, like I say, was kind of, we almost stumbled across it really. And I don't think the midfield question is helped out by the fact that both Lokonga and Partey probably had their worst games of the season at Anfield. Again, it's not exactly unexpected that they would do so, but I think Lokonga really showed that, as technically talented as he is, he's just kind of not got that kind of big game experience and that kind of level-headedness. You can see as he came out in the second half and he made a mistake within maybe the first 30 seconds. And I think that not only shook him, but it shook the rest of the team.
Yeah, Arteta had to take him off, didn't he? Basically.
Yeah, no, he really did. And I feel bad for him. But I wouldn't say he shouldn't be dropped, for example. I don't think there's any question about that. I think he's a really, really technically gifted young player, and he has got that kind of character as shown by the fact that he was captain of the Anderlecht side, and I think he was captain of Belgium's under 21s as well. So I'm expecting him to kind of have the fortitude to come back. But yeah, I think the midfield question is still one we need to kind of solve, and linked to that is the creativity issue. I still don't think we're really creating enough chances when you consider the amount of weight that is on Smith-Rowe and Saka's shoulders, because Aubameyang is essentially a non-factor in that aspect of the game. You're essentially relying on him to finish any chances you create. So yeah, no, it's definitely a cause of, if not concern, something to monitor.
Yeah, I want to finish with you with some of the attacking players in a sec, Adam. How do you foresee Almiron and Fraser fitting into what Eddie Howe may want to do? Because I think my instinct was to think, do you know what? Bravery in certain fixtures, 4-4-2, have them on either side and Saint-Maximin in a more central area, which we have seen before. And that front four could be quite exciting if you can get Ryan Fraser fully fit and firing again.
Yeah, he obviously knows Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe knows him, where he plays. I think he had an impact when he came on. As I've said, I can't believe I'm coming on here talking about and defending Joel Linton, but it feels like, depending on the game situation, he played well. I think I don't know now. I've always been an advocate of trying to get the kind of Wilson, Saint-Maximin, Almiron and Fraser in the same team. I think it's just a little bit too lightweight for what we need at the moment, particularly in the next run of games. I mean, by all means, like, we've got nothing to lose in some of these games. Run it out and see if it produces, a better counter-attacking team that's got more legs. I'm just not sure. I think if it was going to happen, it probably would have happened by now. I know that the various players have had injuries and stuff. I just don't know if Eddie Howe is going to go that way with those four players. He might do. He might pick a game when they're all fit. I think, again, international break and stuff was not the opportunity to kind of throw Almiron back in there. He'll definitely get a chance. I think he deserves a chance. He brings a lot to the team. And if he can improve his finishing, like he seems to have worked with Joel Linton, then and we can get a few goals out of it.
It's interesting.
What a strike.
Go on, Adam.
I was going to say, it's interesting because it seems like you're kind of in a bit of a similar situation, ironically, to a lot of Arsenal fans are saying, okay, you've got Aubameyang, Lacazette, Saka and Smith-Rowe, who on recent form, no one really was questioning starting at Anfield. But then that means you're left on the bench with Martin Ødegaard, who last season was really, really pivotal in kind of kickstarting a good run of form for us. Nicola Pepe, who for all his flaws still provides a lot of kind of end product for us. And Gabriel Martinelli, who a lot of fans kind of have pinned a lot of hope on. And it seems like you're in that similar situation where you've got a lot of attacking players who you want to see in the side, but then you maybe don't have the solidity, especially in midfield, to kind of cover for all of that. Well, you simply can't fit them all into the same team, and even if you could fit 3 of them in, you don't really have that midfield strength to cover for it.
Yeah, I think it's that. It's ball retention as well is a big issue for us, and something that Eddie Howe won't put up with. 20%, 25% possession. So I think it'll come down to which team is out there that actually manages to get us a win, and I think he'll likely ride that formation, that setup, and that kind of group of players, and also which ones can actually adapt to his system the better. Which I think, given the lack of quality that we've got in some areas of our team, I'm not sure if throwing, small, quick kind of players that play on the break like Fraser and Almiron is really going to help us in those areas. So fascinating to see. Hopefully, we aren't too demoralised after this run, and we actually manage to pick up a win before we get to January. I know after Arsenal, we've got two pretty big games where we'll be targeting. If we don't come out with a win from that, I think it's the club's going to have to work miracles in January to convince players to come, just because of the position we'll be in. I still think we'll get out of it, even if we are on the bottom three, and if we are bottom. But yeah, I think we've got to get some wins on the board before the new year.
Yeah, that period you speak about, obviously following the game at the weekend, Norwich at home, Burnley at home. I mean, you're absolutely right. If you've got to the end of the Burnley game, you haven't won a game yet, and then you're looking at Leicester away, Liverpool away, City at home, United at home, Everton away, you could very easily be walking into the transfer market still on 0 wins, mate. And then exactly what you said, who wants to come then? Unless you're going to get Tarkowski and, for example, this sort of player, and you're going to have a release clause if you do go down, or is he happy to go and play in the Championship for a year? That would possibly depend a lot on wages. It's very difficult to say what's going to happen in January, because I think you're right. I think what happens probably over the next 3 games is going to really influence what happens over that period. I do think you will win something. That I wouldn't be surprised if you won the 2 games back to back, Norwich and Burnley, and then the uplift is massive, and then you just go and swing at those 4 really difficult Christmas games, and anything you get there is a bonus. Because I'm wildcarding in 16 side, you're like top of my agenda, mate, for those 2 home games, unbelievably. And my plan at the moment is to buy Callum Wilson for the Norwich and Burnley fixtures. Am I buying the right player, Si? If I do.
Well, he's currently on 4 yellow cards.
I'm aware.
And he's been booked 3 times in the last 4 games. So
we've got to stop doing it now, hasn't he?
Yep. As someone that bought him for the Brentford game just gone, he was unlucky not to get a return, but it was his kind of typical Callum Wilson game where he was kind of on the periphery a bit, played quite well, shot blocked off the line, things like that. So could have quite easily been like a kind of classic 8-9 pointer from him. I mean, it would be just typical of FPL if he went to Arsenal, got booked, and then was missing for the Norwich home game.
I ain't buying him yet, so if he gets booked this week, I ain't bothered. I'll just do something else.
Well, it's all right for you. Well, I'm looking at. I did a wildcard draft the first time early today, and just chickened out on pressing the button. But he's in there at the moment. He'll play against Arsenal. I think he's still the pick. It's hard to go against Saint-Maximin. I've owned him already this season. He's actually returned for me, whereas Wilson's just got injured and blanked, and a couple of times I've already owned him. But I still think until we sign someone, if we can sign someone in January that's going to consistently score goals, he's still the main man up front.
I think because of those 4 Christmas fixtures between 16 and 19, I think anybody who is looking at Wilson is probably only looking short term anyway, which is it's perfect for my example where I'm looking to wildcard straight after the Burnley game. Yeah, great, get rid. But for people who are looking to buy, possibly for this weekend, would the yellow card be enough to put you off doing it? Because as you said, it'd be a sickener if you got booked at the Emirates and missed Norwich at home, and essentially that's what you're really buying for, is to have him in for that. Yeah, with that in mind, would you rather go with the other main man who's a little bit cheaper as well?
Well,
Saint-Maximin, obviously.
I don't think anyone's buying Newcastle players, are they, this week? I mean, I can have a quick look now to see transfers in for the week, but
it depends though. It might be something that facilitates something, right? So it could be, I don't know, someone's thinking of coming down from Ronaldo to Wilson level, and then shoving the money up something else.
85,000 people have put Saint-Maximin in because he scored last week. I'd say it's not impossible that we'd score against Arsenal. So I mean, I put Wilson in against Brentford, thinking of it as 4 decent fixtures.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people,
which is kind of why I wanted to go and then, so I can have a look at some other areas in my team that need addressing. But I was quite happy to just put them in for those 4 games. And then potentially, like you say, even I think Leicester away at the moment doesn't look like the worst fixture, which I think is the one that's coming up after that. Well,
you did score 4 there last year as well. So,
yep.
Steve Bruce's Newcastle, I saw that night. Yeah, very good.
Yeah. So yeah, not a bad run. And then obviously it's the Liverpool away, Manchester City at home is like you're guaranteed 2 blanks there pretty much from recent results. So I think if anyone's on that kind of wild card 16, you might be getting off at the wrong time when we bang 4 in against Leicester.
Yeah, I don't think you want to keep Wilson for Liverpool and Manchester City back to back. If there was just one,
and then Man United at home, and then Rafa away.
Well, United at home might be very different by the time it comes around. Obviously, it's difficult to say at the moment. Yeah. But I mean, with that in mind, Adam, following Newcastle, obviously you go to Old Trafford, and then you go to Everton. Neither of those 2 teams are in a particularly good state at the moment. Do you look at those 2 away fixtures with confidence, or is it still all their traditionally difficult away games?
I would have been more confident if Ole was still in charge of United, but I think definitely United, and you can probably feel a little bit similar as well, James, as a Spurs fan. The United game sort of lost that fear factor, I think, over the last season. For me, it has anyway, because I've seen Arsenal in most games against, apart from there was one tie in the FA Cup, but in most games against Solskjaer's United, I think we've looked like the better side, and it's very rare that I've felt kind of we've been able to control the game and really dictate the tempo. And I think I'd still feel confident about doing that against whatever Carrick sets up. Like, I mean, at time of recording, it was their game against Villarreal last night, and from what I saw of it, they weren't really up to anything special. It seemed to be a little bit maybe Jadon Sancho is now revitalized, or however you want to spin him scoring, but it's not one I'd be particularly fearful of. And like you say, Everton, maybe they might have a few of their players back by then, and whilst it is a ground where we've traditionally struggled, even back to Wenger's time, I don't really think they pose much of a kind of a fear factor anymore. So maybe I'm not going there saying, oh yeah, we're going to win both, but I'd be disappointed if we lost both, and I'd say 3 points would be a minimum expectation. Like, you can go to Old Trafford and Cristiano Ronaldo can score a 90th minute winner, and you just kind of have to suck that up sometimes, because players of his caliber can do that to you. But I'd be quite disappointed if we lost to Everton, for sure.
Yeah, I understand that. With that in mind, we spoke about Ronaldo to Wilson as a downgrade. About Ronaldo to Aubameyang.
No, I knew you were going to say that. No.
Why no?
I still don't think we're creating the volume of chances that would give me confidence that him in his kind of current iteration is going to score a lot of goals, if that makes sense. I mean, also, this is kind of partly tinged by the fact that in general, I don't think there's much value in the premium striker market anymore. So I feel like you're better off distributing that cash elsewhere in your team. I also think whilst Aubameyang previously was quite good at kind of snap finishing and snap chances, and even though he would have some bad misses, especially when he first joined Arsenal. I remember kind of putting my head in my hands a few games where he would come out with 2 goals, but you think, well, okay, he could have had like 6 or 7. I just don't think he's that player anymore. I think he needs more chances than he did previously in order to score. So no, I wouldn't be investing in him.
Do you think he'll still be on penalties?
Yes, I do.
He's obviously missed the last 2 in your last 2 home games, Villa and Watford.
Yeah.
You think you still have him? Because Lacazette's taken plenty in the past, hasn't he?
Yeah, no, he has. But I mean, Aubameyang scored for Gabon in the international break. He scored a penalty. And I think even Arteta came out in his post-international break press conference saying he was still on penalties or something to that effect. So yeah, I would still expect him to take them. And I also wouldn't be surprised if Lacazette was dropped this weekend either.
Is that off the back of the Liverpool game? There's one thing I really like about Lacazette, actually. I actually think he's a very good defensive forward. Like I've seen him do good kind of man-to-man jobs on players like Fabinho in the past. I didn't feel like he had a great influence on the game once the tempo. Liverpool can do that to anyone, right? Once they lift the tempo of the game. But I quite like him in there, actually. I think because he's a goal scorer, people tend to judge him on his goal scoring statistics. I actually think he does a good job for the team. But I think what you're going to say is the problem is the creativity when he plays in there, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. I think sometimes because he is nominally a striker, he allows a little bit too much of a disconnect to happen between the midfield and the attack. And then you're sort of forcing the wider players like Smith-Rowe and Saka to come inside and do a lot of that kind of mid-third ball progression for you. Whereas if you drop someone like a Ødegaard in there, you've just got a more natural player in the centre of the park, and also someone who isn't, I mean, all due respect to Newcastle, we shouldn't need a defensive forward we shouldn't need someone like Lacazette to kind of post up and play in that kind of more defensive facilitating striker role. We should feel confident enough to have a more solely creative presence in there who won't offer you as much from a defensive aspect, but will increase like kind of your attacking potential. So I think I'd like to see Ødegaard start, and for us to really kind of go into this game and put Anfield behind us and say, okay, yeah, that was a blip. We can still, not only can we still beat the sides that you would expect Arsenal to beat, but we can do so with a bit of added creativity.
So do you think, Adam, you completely turned the corner then? Because I feel like we've seen this from Arsenal before. They lose a game that they're supposed to lose, and then you play a team like Newcastle. Even like when you were talking about the Man U game and Everton game, I feel like if you do lose to us somehow this weekend, like, do you think it's, you know, you've moved beyond losing 2 or 3 games in a row and then Arteta becoming under pressure, and, you know, all these managers have been sacked and there's only a few left that have been in the post since last season, and it's going to be someone that's going to be in the hot seat. So do you just think that's not going to happen?
Do you mean
you could go on another bad run where you've lost a game against Liverpool that everyone thought you were going to lose, and it was a bad defeat. You come up against a team like Newcastle, you expected to win. You lose, which we've seen in the past, and then you go on a bit of a bad run. Do you just think that your team is now kind of beyond putting on a bad run of fixtures and Arteta getting in trouble? Because I can potentially see that happening this weekend. Like, I've got a little bit of confidence that we might be able to catch you on a potentially at the start of another bad run for Arsenal that we've seen in the past.
I mean, I know if I say this, I'm going to jinx it and we will end up losing. But I'd like to think, if not necessarily a corner has been turned, there is aspects of this side that I don't think previous Arsenal teams had. Like we were talking earlier about the defence and the defensive solidity and the defensive kind of unity. I think this is the most cohesive backline I've seen Arsenal have for a while. And I think the biggest problem of previous Arsenal sides was you had players who would just break that up. Like you had a player like Mustafi, like David Luiz, like Pablo Mari, who were just capable of dropping like 3 out of 10s and no one's surprised. Whereas I think if I said to you at the weekend, Gabriel was going to have an absolute stinker, I think we'd all be like surprised, or at least a stink.
I'd assume Joe Linton's man of match in that case, right?
Well, yeah, now we're certainly living in fairy tale land. But yeah, I don't think that kind of persistent run where Arsenal look like the stereotypical same old Arsenal that, like you say, I'd like to think we're kind of past it. It doesn't mean that I don't think you'll challenge us at the weekend. Like I think someone like Saint-Maximin and like sort of James and I were saying earlier, I think Saint-Maximin could pose quite a big threat to Tomiyasu with his agility and with his kind of ability to cut inside. I could see him posing us quite a lot of issues, but I still think the base is solid enough that we won't be as fragile in these games as I think we have been in the past.
Interesting. Obviously, when our wild card, Adam, is 16, you've then got quite a good run of fixtures. It's back-to-back home games, Southampton, West Ham, which in isolation could both be difficult, but Leeds away, Norwich away. It's a good little run of fixtures there, then Wolves at home. Smith-Rowe would be the priority, would it? If I want to invest in Arsenal, is it just straightforward and obvious? I mean, he's got more points than Aubameyang.
Yeah, no, I think in the pre-season clash of the correspondents, I highlighted him as the player that I would go to, and I think we said at the time, like, kind of, I was expecting a season of like 15 goal contributions, and I'm not sure exactly what he's on at the moment, but I would say he's on course for that. I think even this game at the weekend could be one which he benefits in quite a lot if Newcastle set up in a back five and you've got Willock and Shelvey as that double pivot. You can see Smith-Rowe with his ability to kind of hang wide left, but then cut back in to that kind of left half space, as it were, with a fullback overlapping. I can see that kind of being quite a fruitful angle for him. So yeah, I think he's definitely my priority. I understand a lot of people went on Saka because his underlying data is much better. I just think he's lacking a little bit of confidence, weirdly. After the summer, I think he was quite tired and physically burnt out. And whilst he's showed patches of the amazing player we all know he can be, and to an extent already is, he's just not quite hit his stride yet this season. So
Smith-Rowe scored against us in the last time we played at Arsenal. Played really well, actually. It was like the first time I'd seen him play, and it was a bit of a coming out party. I think it was January of this year. Played really well. I'd say if Arsenal are going to score, which you think is going to happen, he's almost a certainty to be involved for the reasons Adam mentioned. And like we talked about earlier, if he plays Shelvey in there as well, I don't think he's got the discipline to stay with him, and he'll just run between the lines. He'll potentially get a lot of opportunities, or more opportunities than he does, because he seems to be a kind of 1-2 opportunity a game type player.
Well, yeah,
I think he might get 3 or 4 in this one.
When in that mold, he's a little bit. I've kind of talked of him as a bit of like a Rosicky kind of Ramsey hybrid, because he's got that kind of really delicate looking ability to stride with the ball that Rosicky had. But then he's got that kind of final third timing and penalty box area kind of positioning that Ramsey in that 13-14 season, where he was just like FPL gold dust that season. So yeah, I agree with you there. So.
FPL gold dust and Arsenal. I feel like it's it's been a while, Adam. Do you think just finally? Do you think dipping Saka out the team might be a good idea then, and just play Pepe for a bit? Because I thought after the derby, I mean, I thought he was great against us. To be honest, most of your players were. We were obviously very bad, admittedly. But Saka looked at that stage like he was going to be worth more from an FPL perspective than Smith-Rowe. I thought it looked like he was going to go on and explode Saka. Nothing since.
Yeah, I don't know whether dipping him out would be necessarily a bad idea. I think we need to see him start kind of coming off in games more. Like, I don't think he can be a 90-minute player, really. Not to say that he shouldn't be because of like quality of performance or ability, but I think we need to realise the creative and goal scoring burden that the way we've set up puts on him, and kind of respect that in a way and say, okay, yeah, we can take you off at 70 minutes and bring on Pepe, who he won't bring as much in the build-up play or defensively necessarily, but he does have that kind of final third ability, that finishing, and the kind of better history of goal scoring than Saka does. So yeah, I wouldn't say he should be dropped this weekend. But yeah, I think I'd need to see something from Pepe, maybe in a cup game, where he really cements his authority on a match for me to kind of push that more prominently.
All right. Look forward to watching you play Sunday on the 21st of December or whatever that is. And so if Wilson does get booked this week, should I be buying Saint-Maximin or Joel Linton before we play Norwich?
Well, good question. I don't know. I think we need to see more tape on how they play. But I mean, we've said it previously about how Saint-Maximin's role changes when Wilson isn't in the team. So if you're taking a 1 week punt on a fly, I think he's the standout option. Although Norwich doesn't look like an easy game now, unfortunately, with their managerial change. So, yeah.
Well, this is part of the problem. Norwich and Burnley will be both looking at playing you and thinking the same thing that you're thinking. Got to get points against you. So
two big games.
Guys, thanks so much for that. Really enjoyed it. Before I let you both go, let's do correct score predictions for the game. It's the 12:30 Saturday, isn't it? I'll be en route to Manchester to watch my own team get his pants pulled down this weekend, no doubt. Go on, Adam. Correct score prediction, mate.
2-0 to Arsenal.
Si?
I've talked myself into a Newcastle win, I think. And I've also just realised that game is on at 4:30 in the morning where I am. So fucking hell. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get up for that or stay up for that. But yeah, I think fuck it. Newcastle win, Arsenal go on a terrible run of losing 5 games. Arteta will be sacked for Christmas. But before that, we will probably just shit our pants and lose to Norwich the following week. But Saint-Maximin will score after Wilson gets booked this weekend, so you'll be all right, James.
Go on, correct score. I'll pin you for something.
3-1 Newcastle.
Fair enough.
Adam, you know there was a bit coming earlier where you thought you were going to get clipped. I don't think so, mate. I'm going to go.
That.
I think you'll score. I think you'll score, Si. I think you'll score this weekend. I really do, actually. I think there's going to be a trend of your games are going to be fairly high scoring, and I think that's going to continue, actually, even through some of those more difficult fixtures that you've got in December. Then it might calm down. But I'm going to predict you the score. I'm going to say 2-1 to Arsenal. I don't. Sorry, mate. What did you expect? Let's be really honest about it.
Well, as a Tottenham fan.
Well, to be honest, if we'd have sat here 3-4 weeks ago, I'd probably said I think this will be 3 or 4-0, mate. Actually, but I'm not convinced that that's within you at the moment, Adam, to go and really take someone apart. Actually, the goals scored column is a little bit concerning. As I said, 4 less than Newcastle, which feels remarkable. The flip of that is you're definitely getting better defensively. I could see you going in front, Sire, and then pulling it back on you. But I do think Arsenal will win. I can't predict different to that. 2-1 could be 3-1. Adam, where can everyone follow you on Twitter, mate?
So you can find me on Twitter at 35who, spelled out, not in numbers.
And Si?
FPL_footballer. Footballer. Although I'm only on Twitter for the singing dialect spaces these days.
Right, I'm just going to let that slide, honestly. Adam's only on Twitter for cheese puns, in fairness. So, I mean, follow away, guys, by all means. Yeah, give the guys a follow on Twitter, guys. Next week's Clash of Correspondents a little bit different. It will be on Thursday because we've got midweek fixtures next week, obviously. It will be Tottenham versus Brentford. They play each other next Thursday night. So I've got Ricky Saunders and Tom Med joining me to preview that. And we'll also look at their respective clashes the following weekend. Brentford go to Leeds and Tottenham host Norwich in game week 15. Other than that, thanks again to Adam and to Si. Cue music, please, man, Charles.